walk. We have Georgia Center for OCD and Anxiety, Urban Realty Partners, and Riley's Wish were our big sponsors for this year, and we just appreciate their support of OCD Georgia and the OCD Georgia community. And then of course it wouldn't matter if we had businesses sponsoring or not, we couldn't have done it without you guys. So we owe a big round of applause to everybody for all of your fundraising efforts and all of your advocacy as well. So if you were here last year, you had the pleasure of hearing Susan, who was our Grand Marshal last year. We loved her so much that we drug her back along this year to be our Master of Ceremonies. So give a big round of applause to Susan.
I am so glad to be back this year. We drive down every year from Davidson, North Carolina, and I sit on the board of the International OCD Foundation up in Boston, where I go 4 or 5 times a year to do some work with them. It's just my pleasure to be here in Georgia today. About 10 years ago, when my daughter first was diagnosed, there was really very, very little resources in the South, and I think that the South is traditionally underrepresented in mental health care. And so to have this many people coming out and representing OCD and walking for those that you love and care for, and to help raise awareness and also money for OCD, I think is incredibly important and very, very impressive. And I don't have the final numbers on what we've raised, but I know it's over $10,000 at our last tally, which is just amazing. So.
Actually, we're right under 14,000. So way to go, OCD Georgia.
Just for your information, there are so many things that we do with that money at the OCD Foundation, and 2 of the ones that I really want to highlight are research, both for causes of OCD and also for additional cures and treatment protocols. That's a huge area that we work very hard on funding. And the other big thing that we do is we train therapists, and that is probably one of the most needed things. We run a number of we call them training institutes around the country with top therapists every year, and our pediatric one sells out in under 10 minutes. It's so important that we raise additional money so that we can continue to have even more training, because every therapist that we train is going to teach 2 or 3 more people, and will touch hundreds and hundreds of lives. So we can train one person and know that we've then touched at least 100 people. So that's a really critical piece of what we do, and that money will go directly there. So what you're doing here today, unbelievably important, and I just want to sincerely say thank you from the organization. I also want to thank Casey and Margaret. They spend an unbelievable number of hours, as well as the entire board of OCD Georgia, organizing this and making sure that we have a lot of fun while we're here. We do have a raffle right afterwards, so make sure to stick around for after the walk. But I'd now like to introduce Michael Janicki. Michael is a good friend of mine and has been incredibly influential. Many of you may already know who he is, but if you don't, he actually started the residential treatment center up in Boston called the OCD Institute. It's at McLean, and it treats people every year. They have a long waiting list all the time. They're just an amazing, amazing organization, and he started that. He's also the man behind much of the research that's happened behind OCD. 30 or 40 years ago, no one knew how to treat it, no one knew what it was, and he really has been incredibly influential, going on television shows, talking about it. He's published over 200 papers on OCD, and really is just an amazing person. That's sort of his professional resume.
You can stop it.
His personal resume, no, I'm not going to go there. But what I really do want to say about Michael is that he is an amazing human being. He's funny. He always brings it down to a lower level so we don't have to take ourselves quite so seriously, and he does that with great genuineness and sometimes really kind of funny humor. Other times, not so much. But Michael is also a generous person. I have seen him take time with individuals that no one else was willing to sit down and help. And he has just done such amazing things. There's a few books out there some of you may have read. But the truth of Michael is that he is willing to help anyone. If he has to sit for 12 hours and answer questions so that he can touch every single person that's come to an event, he will do that. And so it's my great honor to introduce my friend and colleague, Michael Janicki.
Thank you, Chris. So now I have to be funny and helpful. So I always like to find out a little bit about the audience. How many of you are Trump supporters? How about Hillary?
Yes.
How many of you don't care?
How many just care?
They're desperately.
Are just screwed.
There we go.
You're going to
It
lose
could be a weird country over the next few years. I also want to thank Margaret and Casey and Susan. I've known these guys for a long time. They're all amazing people who will do anything to help people. It's not just me. I get a lot of the credit for helping people, but it's mostly people like them that are doing it. I really appreciate you guys coming out. I started doing OCD things about 1979, which means I'm just about in the grave, I guess. And if we had an event like this, then there'd be nobody. We could publicize it wherever. Nobody would come. I would be there because I like to walk. So you guys are contributing to the education, the energy, the fundraising, and so forth. So our doing research and other things is dependent on you guys. Now, I want to say, I don't mind if people email me. So if you want to email me a question about OCD, do it. I'll give you my email address. I won't give you a real one. I'll give you a pseudo one. When I go around and talk and I meet people, people always say, my son has had all the available treatments. And then I start talking to them, and they might have had all the available medications. That happens sometimes. But if you're not doing the behavioral therapy, that's the key treatment. How many of you agree with that? No, some of you don't, probably. How many of you, well, I won't ask personal questions. How many of you are dating a younger girl? No, sorry. Sorry, Susan wants me to behave. Thank you. So I think it's worth, if you or our family members had OCD for many years, even decades, it's really worth going and getting evaluation to see what the newer techniques are. At the OCD Institute, we've been treating people for 20 years, and even though we're using cognitive behavioral therapy and other similar approaches, the science of it has emerged and grown so much that we can really help people now that we couldn't help 10 or 20 years ago. So there's a lot known. Don't give up just because you think you have to have this curse the rest of your life. You will have some of it, but you can lead most people can lead a perfectly normal life, get married, have children, and so forth. If you want information, the OC Foundation website, International OC Foundation in Boston, has tons of information. We put a lot of time, energy, and money into getting that updated. There's sections on there for kids, for guidance counselors, for teachers. You can go in there and get any kind of information you want, and it's actually accurate and up to date. There's a lot of nonsense out of there, and a lot of doctors don't know how to treat OCD, and they say they do. So it's worth going there and checking out and making sure you're getting the right treatments. My email is really simple. Just Jenneke, my last name, at Comcast.net. NET is the hardest part, because you're going to put something else on there. But if you have a question or if I can help you, I really don't mind if you email me. Try to keep it short. The long ones I kind of put off until tomorrow and then the next day and so forth. But if you have questions or you need you need to find a doctor somewhere, we're really pretty good now. The OC Foundation has a list of referral sites for people that really know about OCD. And then in closing, I wanted to mention Margaret and Riley. I don't know how many of you know Riley. How many of you knew Riley? Some of you do, I know. Riley was a remarkable young man who lost his life a little less than 2 years ago to really OCD and addiction, accidental overdose. He was an addict. He didn't want to be an addict. He wanted to help other people with OCD and to help other people with addictions. He started a whole addiction wing. He wrote up some information and review and papers, and he really set the stage for working with people who have OCD and addiction. And addiction's key to me. Not that I use any particular kind of interesting drugs, but my daughter was a heroin addict for 15 years, and she didn't have OCD, but now she's been clean 2 years, just had a baby last week, and people can turn around the addictions, OCD, so there's really hope for people no matter how bad they are. You need to just hang in there, get the best experts you can to help them. And in closing, just let me say, have a good time. I'd like to talk to a lot of you, but don't hesitate to email me if I can be of help at all. I should close with a good joke, but I don't have any good OCD jokes. All right, thank you very much.
So we are going to get a group photo. We did it after the walk last year. Everybody was hot, sweaty, ready to go. So we learned we're actually going to do that at the beginning before we have everybody.
Okay, here he goes, folks. This will start our walk for OCD.
Okay, let's have some applause.
We're going to start walking down this way. Michael will lead us.